So I just watched Wednesday, Netflix's latest big-scale adaptation of a classic franchise, and I liked it. I liked it quite a lot, actually. I know I sound surprised when I say this, and it's because I am surprised. I'm surprised because I personally did not care about this show at all. I was not excited for it one bit, and that's for two main reasons. The first reason is simply that I was never a big fan of the Addams Family. I never really cared for it. I know it might be blasphemous for a lot of people, but I don't know, it was never really my thing. It's not that I hate the Addams Family, I definitely don't. I've seen a few iterations of it over the years, and I fairly enjoyed most of it, but like I said, I just wasn't ever a fan of it. So when a show about Wednesday was announced, I wasn't particularly excited for it, I didn't really care, and I honestly forgot about it pretty quickly. But the second reason why I wasn't excited for it has less to do with the Addams Family itself and more about who was behind the show. And that is where we need to talk about the fall of Tim Burton. I think it's pretty hard to argue the fact that Tim Burton is one of the most influential filmmakers of all time. He's made some legendary films that very much impacted an entire generation. I myself grew up obsessed with Edward Scissorhands, Corpse Bride, Beetlejuice, and obviously his legendary incarnation of Batman.
I want you to tell all your friends about me.
What are you?
I'm Batman.
I was obsessed with his work. I went through a period of time where I watched Sleepy Hollow on repeat for weeks on end, and I could not get enough of it. I have since rewatched the movie as an adult, and I've accepted that Sleepy Hollow is not the masterpiece I thought it was when I was a kid, but it still has a place in my heart that will never be touched. Look, the point is, as a creative, Tim Burton is a very unique figure who very much put his stamp on cinema and inspired thousands upon thousands of filmmakers that followed him. He's a legend, and for good reason. However, as undeniable as his status of legend is, it is also undeniable that in the last 10 to 15 years, Tim Burton has kinda lost his magic. After Sweeney Todd came out in 2007, things kinda got rough with Tim Burton's films. It's like they became a pale shadow of what they used to be, and they just got so bad. Like, it's kind of insane. His live-action Alice in Wonderland was absolutely awful. I don't care what anybody says, this movie sucks ass. You can argue with the wall. Dark Shadows was a complete train wreck. I never even finished Miss Peregrine's House for Fucked Up Kids or whatever it's called. I was 2/3 into this movie and I just decided to quit. I was bored out of my mind. Big Eyes was whatever. It's forgettable at best, so much so that I'm pretty sure most people don't even know he made this movie. And the last film he directed was his 2019 adaptation of Dumbo, which is probably the most soulless movie he's made to date. You get the gist. His work just hasn't been the same. My friend Broey Deschanel made a video about that very topic a couple weeks ago, where she breaks down his career and analyzes where that decline started and how it has evolved over time. I highly recommend you check it out. That video is fucking incredible and she explains things way better than I ever could. I'll leave you a link to it in the description. But all of that to say, over the last decade, I have unfortunately fallen out of love with Tim Burton's work. So much so that whenever I hear he is attached to an upcoming project nowadays, I am not excited about it one bit. So long story short, given all of these reasons, you can imagine that Tim Burton making a show about Wednesday Addams is not something I would be looking forward to in a million years. I didn't even like the trailers. The aesthetics look nice, which you have to expect from Tim Burton. He has a signature look that I adore, but it didn't seem more exciting than that. However, the show came out and I decided to just watch the pilot to see how it turned out. I wasn't really expecting much. I was pretty positive that I wouldn't watch anything past the pilot, but lo and behold, the first episode genuinely surprised me. I really liked it. In fact, I liked it so much that I ended up watching the whole season that same day. This show is easily the biggest surprise of the year for me. I could have never imagined liking it so much. It's kind of crazy, actually. Now again, I'm not a huge fan of the Addams Family originally, so I don't really know if this show is like blasphemous to fans of previous iterations and they're gonna hate it because it's not what they grew up with. I guess that's gonna be for you guys to let me know in the comments. I'm actually very curious to know. But the point is, keep in mind that I am approaching this show from the lens of somebody who doesn't know that much about the Addams Family. I'm a total noob, so I'm very much taking this show as it is, and I can't really compare it to what the Addams Family was in the past. And as it is, I gotta say, this show is pretty good. It's not a perfect show, we're gonna talk about that in a minute, but as far as I'm concerned, Timmy Burton kinda redeemed himself in my eyes a little bit with this one, but just a little bit. Let's not get crazy. The show can be pretty basic in some aspects. A couple of characters are kind of cringe, others are a bit unnecessary, but we'll get to all of that in due time. Okay, let's break it down. So Wednesday is the story of, well, Wednesday Addams. I don't know if I really need to introduce the character, she's iconic, but long story short, Wednesday is a bit odd, and she's a bit of an outsider. She's obsessed with the macabre, she barely feels any emotion, and she scares people away quite easily. The show starts when she gets expelled from her regular-ass school after dropping a bunch of angry piranhas in a pool full of water polo jocks who bullied her little brother and trapped him in a locker. Fun times. After this incident, Wednesday's parents, Morticia and Gomez, decide to send her to the school where they met decades ago, Nevermore, which is pretty much a bootleg Hogwarts for outcasts, bizarre kids with supernatural abilities or conditions. There are telepaths, sirens, werewolves, vampires, and other cheeky people with different superpowers. Wednesday herself has recently started to have strange visions triggered by physical touch, but she doesn't know what they are or how to control them. Wednesday reluctantly has to go to the school, and there she is assigned a roommate named Enid, a young werewolf who has not had her first transformation yet. Wednesday hates her along with everyone else because it's Wednesday, and as she gets ready to execute her evil plan to cause trouble on purpose in order to get expelled as quickly as possible, things take a sinister turn when the brutal murder of a student becomes inexplicably tied to her. And immediately, I have to point out the best element of this show by far. And that is Wednesday herself. Jenna Ortega just took this role and made it hers immediately. She is fucking unbelievable in this role. There isn't a single scene where she's not at 100%. She carries the hell out of this show. Genuinely, after a minute of seeing her on screen, I was so on board. Even if the show had sucked, I would have watched it just for her. Her line delivery is impeccable, and it works perfectly with the amazing dialogue that's given to her. Her lines are so funny, and Jenna portrays Wednesday's dry humor so well. It's literally a perfect match.
I trust Enid has given you the old Nevermore welcome.
She's been smothering me with hospitality. I hope to return the favor. In her sleep.
That boy's family was going to file attempted murder charges. How would that have looked on your record?
Terrible. Everyone would know I failed to get the job done.
We have roof parties, campouts, the occasional midnight skinny dip.
And Yoko's an amateur mixologist.
She makes a killer virgin mojito. It can get pretty wild.
Wow, do you guys even have a bedtime?
Aren't you pumped about disco balls and spiked punch? There's even a DJ. MC Bloodsuckers.
I'd rather stick needles in my eyes. I'll probably do that anyway. Birthday, yes. Happy, never.
Don't you like a day that's all about you?
Every day is all about me. This one just comes with cake and a bad song.
They nailed it. Sometimes her cold jokes are a bit overdone, but never to the extent of it becoming annoying. But overall, it works so amazingly that I'm willing to let slide the couple of times where they missed the mark. They really needed to get it right. If Jenna Ortega had been bad in the role, it wouldn't have worked. And if Tim Burton and the writers had not given her the right dialogue, it wouldn't have worked. I don't use this word often, but I have to give it to them. The portrayal portrayal of Wednesday in this show, both on an acting angle and on a writing angle, is perfect. It's impeccable, and I don't think they could have done it better. And honestly, the entire pilot is kind of designed to show off how well they executed Wednesday. It takes its sweet time to establish the status quo of the season, and it really focuses on putting Wednesday in the front to convince you that they didn't half-ass it. And you know what? It really works. The pilot is awesome. I was so surprised at how much I liked it. In fact, it kind of filled a hole that had been there inside of me for a few years now. Because in just one episode, I was hit with a thought that immediately made me smile. Wednesday, as a show, is everything Chilling Adventures of Sabrina should have been. I would go even further and say that Wednesday is everything Chilling Adventures of Sabrina was trying to be and failed miserably at being because, well, Roberto Aguirre Sacasa. Wednesday is just yet another proof that TV shows by Roberto Aguirre Sacasa could work and be great if he just wasn't involved in them, because he's a terrible writer and an even worse showrunner. Just one episode of Wednesday hammered that point in and put Sabrina in the rearview mirror. Anyways, you get it. Despite all of my apprehension, the pilot of Wednesday got me hooked instantly. I wasn't on board with everything from the get-go though. The show quickly falls into some minor cliches. The character of Enid made me cringe a little. I really didn't like the way they immediately set up what is meant to be an awkward love triangle with two of the least exciting love interests I've seen in a very long time, which why is it that teen shows always want to put romantic storylines at the forefront? I'm sorry, but it feels weirdly out of character for Wednesday. It doesn't make sense in my head that they forced that on her to fit a genre trope. Like, if there is one character that doesn't need a love interest, it's Wednesday Addams, let alone some love interest as boring as these two. The generic white guy TM and this whiny little bitch and his ponytail. But overall, I was pleasantly surprised with this pilot. The main mystery of the show is introduced at the end of that first episode when Rowan, a boy from Nevermore with telekinesis. Jesus. Rowan, a boy from Nevermore with telekinesis powers, tries to kill Wednesday in the woods, and she is saved at the very last second by a very goofy looking creature that attacks and absolutely bodies Rowan. But before getting murdered by the creature, Rowan reveals to Wednesday that his mother was a powerful psychic and that 25 years ago, she had a vision of Wednesday destroying Nevermore and burning it down, killing everyone in it.
Girl in the picture, that's you.
You want to kill me because of some picture.
My mother drew that picture 25 years ago when she was a student at Nevermore.
So when Rowan saw Wednesday arrive at Nevermore, he knew he had to kill her to save the school and its people. After hearing that, Wednesday changes her mind and decides to stay in Nevermore to get to the bottom of it. I'm gonna be honest, I kinda like that as a setup. The mystery is solid. There's a whodunit murder mystery aspect around the identity of the monster killing people in the woods. There's a conspiracy aspect when somebody tries to cover up Rowan's murder in a way that feels way too convenient for Nevermore. And there's a history aspect when it comes to Wednesday and the strange prophecy that seems to have her doomed to destroy Nevermore, and the strange ways it seems to be tied to a secret society inside of the school. Now, yes, many people have pointed it out, the mystery of the show is not as intricate as they seem to think it is. It is quite predictable. I think I solved it early into episode 4, which is about halfway into the show, because some aspects of it were a little too obvious, but there were still enough layers built into it that despite it being predictable, it was still fun and engaging. And I really enjoyed following Wednesday as she investigates. I like that the writers didn't can make her hyper competent in a way where, as a character, she is unable to experience failure. Yes, she is very competent, she has an easy time outperforming people at pretty much everything, but she's not too perfect to the point where she just wins all the time, especially when it comes to the mystery. Like, they didn't pull a Pretty Little Liar's Original Sin where she just kind of guesses everything out of nowhere and for no reason, and she just always happens to be right. Because it makes the mystery bland and unengaging. But no, on the contrary, they really write her mission in a way that feels balanced, and it makes her investigation infinitely more compelling because through the season, most of the mystery evolves and is carried by the fact that Wednesday is wrong. A lot. She makes a lot of mistakes and wrong assumptions that put people in danger, and there are real consequences to that. But she's also selfish, and she goes about investigating in a way that is directly tied to her character arc. It changes who she is as a person. Almost every decision she makes puts her in a position where she has to put herself into question, especially the more she becomes aware of how her decisions affect the people around her.
You are unbelievable.
It's nothing personal.
No, it never is with you, is it? I mean, do you even care about anyone or anything at all, Wednesday?
The show hints that while Wednesday is very confident in herself, she's not always happy with the way she is. There's notably one scene where she admits she wishes she cared a bit more about what people think of her, because she's realizing that she's making friends, but because Wednesday is Wednesday and she's morbid and almost completely devoid of any emotions, she realizes that she has no idea how to be someone's friend. And to some extent, she doesn't even understand that she's getting attached to these people. That's so foreign to her.
I'm not sure why you're becoming upset.
Yeah, that's kind of the problem. I mean, call me crazy, Wednesday, but you keep giving me these signals.
It's not my fault I can't interpret your emotional Morse code.
And watching her sabotaging the relationship she's forming by repeatedly putting people in danger to get what she wants is surprisingly sad to watch. I really like that her character and her investigation mutually affect each other as the story unfolds. That's just solid writing.
You will use anyone to get what you want, even if it means putting them in danger. I've tried really hard to be your friend. Thought of your feelings. Told people, I know she gives off serial killer vibes, but she's really just shy.
I never asked you to do that.
You didn't have to, because that's what friends do!
Anyways, episode 2 has some serious Harry Potter vibes, not only with getting to know Nevermore a bit better, but also with the Cup competition that has moments that feel right out of the Tri-Wizard tournament. I actually like Bianca as a short-term antagonist and a rival to Wednesday. She's very much introduced as a cliché, one-dimensional mean girl, but I like that she doesn't stay that past the first couple of episodes. By the end of the season, she actually becomes a strong ally to Wednesday, even if they don't always see eye to eye. She's also given her own storyline involving her mother and a cult that seems like it's gonna have a much larger role in season 2, and I'm very excited about that. And honestly, I just watch Bianca and Wednesday throw shots at each other all day.
What do we have here? The runt of the litter.
For the record, I don't believe I'm better than everyone else. Just that I'm better than you.
Most of the other characters are fine. Like I said, I wasn't a big fan of Enid as a character. She felt a little bit too cartoony, and her presence in scenes clashed with the tone of the show a little too much. The acting from Emma Myers felt right out of a Disney Channel movie for 8-year-olds. It was a little cringe and a little out of place.
Yoko, come on, flare those whiskers. The Cup droops for no one.
What is the Cup anyway?
Only my entire reason for living right now. You're too needy. Show some teeth. Nobody likes a desperate little furball. Shut up, Mom. Get out of my head.
That's nice, Courtney. Well, thanks for coming over.
But surprisingly, she ended up growing on me a little, and by the finale, I was kind of attached to Enid. Her feeling like an outsider among the werewolves because she hasn't been able to transform on a full moon yet was an interesting theme for her character. There's also a whole thing when it comes to the relationship she has with her mother, who's like kind of not proud that her daughter has not wolfed out yet. And she actually became one of my first suspects because I thought it would have been interesting interesting for Wednesday to find out that the only friend she's ever made is secretly the beast from the woods without knowing it. I mean, I would have taken that over a contrived love interest. All in all, there's some massive improvements to be made with that character, but Enid is cute, and I think she's actually important to the direction the writers are taking with Wednesday's arc, so I'm hoping she just gets better next season. Thing was one of my favorite parts of the entire show. I absolutely love that he's Wednesday's little sidekick. He fucking rocks. I like how sassy they made him. They managed to make him funny and also really attaching. Like, seriously, I was surprised at how attached I got to Thing. It's kind of wild when you really think about it. I mean, come on. There's a scene in episode 7 that has Uncle Fester attempt to revive Thing after he's stabbed by a mysterious killer, and that scene is really emotional, like way more emotional than it has any right to be, and I wasn't expecting that.
Oh, come on, Thing.
Like, take a step back for a second. This is literally a scene where a weird man uses his hands as defibrillators to revive a sentient severed hand that has been attacked. It's so silly, but the show does such a solid job at making you care about these characters that even if it is silly, you still feel the stakes in that sequence, and it works.
Thing, if you can hear me, if you die, I will kill you.
Also, Uncle Fester was pretty alright. I liked him. He made me chuckle a couple times. I didn't care for Tyler at all. He's such a boring character and an even more boring love interest. And the twist with him was so obvious and also a bit strange towards the end. I don't know. I don't care about him, whatever. Xavier was impossibly annoying to me. He's not the worst character ever. Like, I don't hate him or anything, but damn, if he's here to stay, fix him a little bit next season. Being whiny shouldn't be the only character trait he gets to have. He obviously wasn't going to be the creature from the woods. The show tries way too hard to convince you it's him, with the most egregiously obvious misdirects being thrown at him. I do wish the show had found a more creative use of his powers though, because it's pretty unique. He can bring his drawings to life, and that could make for some intricately well thought out moments, especially in fight sequences, but yeah, they never really do anything with that. I was surprised about how little of the Addams family we get to see in this show. I mean, that said, the writers of the show have promised there will be more of them in season 2. That's good enough for me. I like them a lot. Catherine Zeta-Jones is surprisingly fun as Morticia, and I like that the show puts a real emphasis on Wednesday's complicated relationship with her mother. I also liked Wednesday's little brother. He was cute.
Pugsley, you're soft and weak. You'll never survive without me. I give you 2 months, tops.
Set it and forget it.
From what I've seen around though, it seems like a lot of people were not big fans of this version of Gomez, though a lot of people seem to dislike him because they wanted him to be more conventionally attractive, and like, okay, whatever, that sounds like a you problem. But I don't know, guys, I kinda liked him. I think he really fits this show, and I found him genuinely funny.
So how's the little fella doing? Does he still have all his fingers?
Relax. I haven't snapped any of his digits yet.
The show does start losing its pace a little bit in the middle, in episode 5 and the first half of episode 6, and admittedly, the entire flashback storyline with Gomez and Morticia is kind of the reason for that. They completely overtake the show for an entire episode to give us a storyline that is completely unnecessary. I mean, finding out that Morticia killed her stalker as a teenager and Gomez took the fall to protect her was just, okay, why? It doesn't ruin the show or anything, but I just don't understand why they put that there. It was not needed, and it took a lot of time, and it didn't bring anything to the characters. So, yeah. I don't know, man. Gwendoline Christie as the headmistress was a bit too one note, but I really liked her in the role because she looks like she's having so much fun. That said, I did enjoy the moral dilemma of that character who is ready to do anything to protect the school, even if it means letting people die or covering up murders. Like, for most of the season, you can't really tell which side she's on or what she's involved in, but in the end, she's not really a villain, but also definitely not a hero. I'm not sure if the reveal that she's jealous of Morticia because she used to be in love with Gomez as a teenager does much for her as a character, but okay, I guess. The end of her story is weirdly tragic for her. I actually kind of felt bad when she died. Partly because she finally got the confirmation that Wednesday was right this whole time and she should have listened, but also because I don't want Gwendolyn Christie to leave the show. She's a nice presence to have. I'd like to keep her, please. And obviously, I really like Mrs. Thornhill as well. It's really fun that they got Christina Ricci to play a main character in this. Yes, it was blatantly obvious that she was going to be the twist villain of the story. They clearly weren't going to put Christina Ricci in the show just as a cheeky legacy casting choice. But even if you smell it from a mile away, there's something really endearing and fun about watching the old Wednesday Addams going toe-to-toe with the new one. It's like a really sweet passing of the torch type thing and a great way to bring two generations together on screen. It's honestly awesome. I love that they did that. Overall, the characters are fine. I feel like there's some solid groundwork put on most of them, and honestly, Jenna Ortega in the lead role as Wednesday is just incredible. And let's never forget that she gave us what will probably go down as one of the most iconic dance sequences in television history. I don't even like dance sequences, but this one got my heart. However, I do have to talk about the part of the show that I didn't really like, and that part is the ending. The final episode of Wednesday is where the show really started to lose me narratively. I didn't hate it, but it also didn't sit with me too well. It got a little too silly for me in some parts, and there is some really convenient lore that kind of comes out of nowhere to tie up loose ends and solve problems that make it seem like the writers kind of back themselves into a corner when it comes to certain plot points. I'll explain what I mean, but first, let's go back a bit. In episode 6, we find out the person behind all of the murders is the last daughter of the Gates family. Now, the Gates family are descendants of Joseph Crackstone, a colonizer and the founder of Jericho, the town where Nevermore is. He was a horrible man who despised supernatural beings, commonly referred to as outcasts, and back in the 1600s, he was in an all-out war with them over land. He eventually claimed to his followers that a young girl named Goody was a witch, and he had them lock her into a crypt with her entire people to burn them. And we find out early on in the show that Goody, the young girl Joseph Crackstone was at war with, is Wednesday's ancestor, and also her doppelganger. I don't know what that's about though, I'm pretty sure that's never explained. So long story short, Joseph's values and hatred and bigotry were passed down from generation to generation, leading down to the Gates. The Gates family was trying to destroy Nevermore and everyone in it, until their elder son was killed by Morticia decades prior, leading the rest of the family to go crazy and die by suicides and murders. So, a few years later, the Gates family, and therefore Joseph Crackstone's lineage, was believed to be extinct. But the big twist is that the youngest daughter, Laurel Gates, who was believed to have drowned as a child, had actually faked her death and changed her identity, swearing to get revenge on Nevermore in the name of her family. And in the finale, Laurel is finally revealed to be none other than Miss Thornhill. Miss Thornhill is the one who has been controlling the Hyde, the ugly creature that spends the whole show murdering people. We find out that Tyler, Wednesday's incredibly underwhelming love interest, was the creature this whole time, and he saved Wednesday from Rowan in episode 1 because Miss Thornhill needed her alive.
Faking your death. securing a job at Nevermore, unlocking a hide. Typically, I have great admiration for well-executed revenge plots, but yours was a bit extreme, even for my high standards.
Alright, up to now, I'm okay with everything that's going on. But this is where it gets really dumb. Now, through the season, Wednesday is often visited by her ancestor, Goody. She gives her vague directions to help her figure things out, and we learn a bit of history about the show through visions and flashbacks. We notably learn that Goody ended up killing Joseph Crackstone before he could eradicate Outcast. And so, in the finale, it's revealed that this entire time, Miss Thornhill has been using the creature to murder people and collect their body parts in order to revive her ancestor Joseph. Her plan is to have him return and exterminate the outcasts once and for all, but to revive him, she needs Wednesday's blood, because Goody Adams killed Joseph Crackstone back in the 1600s and sealed his soul inside of his sarcophagus, and she locked it with some kind of blood magic, which means it can only be undone by one of her living descendants. Yeah, I know it's convoluted, but bear with me. So Thornhill's plan is to use Wednesday's blood to revive Joseph Crackstone and unleash him and the beast on Nevermore to exterminate the outcasts in Jericho. Okay, so first question. How does Joseph Crackstone have superpowers now? When he comes back to life in the finale, Joseph Crackstone is no longer a muggle who wants to destroy the wizards. Now he has a magic staff that can pretty much do anything he wants. Like, guy is basically Gandalf. He can send fucking evil force fields, he can just blow up a building if he feels like it. He has telekinesis, but like, how? I'm pretty sure that back in the 1600s, Joseph was like just a dude. He didn't have superpowers, so where is that coming from? Also, somebody is gonna have to explain this guy's values to me, because Gandalf over here hates magic. He thinks it's evil. It's like the spawn of Satan in his mind or whatever. So tell me how when he woke up, he didn't immediately kill Miss Thornhill. Even if she is his descendant, he should have killed her for using dark magic to revive him. That's literally everything he stands against. Listen, Joseph, I'm gonna need you to be a bit more consistent. Oh, and also, the one thing that really rubbed me the wrong way, a very weak writing cop-out, is when Joseph comes back to life. See, the first thing he does when he returns to the living world is stab Wednesday, and she falls to the ground. She's bleeding out on the floor and dying.
You will suffer the same fate you bequeathed me. Now burn in the eternal fires of hell.
Like, that's a pretty big deal. That's a big thing to do, you know what I mean? And I'm gonna be honest, I was kind of surprised by that. I was like, wow, ballsy move. I wonder how she's gonna get out of that one. And yeah, I got my answer pretty quickly. And it's not a good answer, because then, out of nowhere, her ancestor Goody shows up and she's like, yo bitch, I kinda need you to go kill Crackstone, like, now.
Listen, Crackstone must be stabbed through his black heart. It's the only way he will be vanquished now and forever.
Is your spectral vision impaired? I'm dying.
So yeah, Wednesday explains that, yeah, she's dying, she can't really move to go do that, and then, in the most coincidental cop-out, Goody explains in like 3 seconds that the necklace Wednesday wears around her neck is not just made to help her with visions. It's also a, quote, powerful talisman made to conjure spirits. And she says that thanks to the necklace, she can pass through Wednesday and heal her from dying. Oh, well, that's convenient. And like, listen, there's a lot of shit that I can kind of let slide with this show, but I have to say that last minute lore that comes out of nowhere and that just happens to solve the very specific unsolvable problem we're facing is one of my biggest narrative pet peeves. It's so lazy, and for a show that puts so much effort into setting things up in very detailed ways, that particularly stood out to me. And obviously that's what happens. Wednesday is just healed out of nowhere in 3 seconds and she goes back to the school to fight Voldemort or whatever. And I don't know, man. I just don't like how that finale plays out. There are some elements that I liked. Enid finally turning into a werewolf for the first time and fighting the beast in the woods is pretty sweet for her arc, and it made her character matter more to the plot, which was nice. The fight itself was kinda dumb. Both of the creatures look really bad. Mostly the hide though. I honestly have no clue what that design choice was. It looks right out of the live action Scooby-Doo movies. But at least it did a lot for the character arc, so I'll give it that. Wednesday fights Crackstone. Their duel is short but actually fun, and then she manages to kill him with the help of Bianca. Then Miss Thornhill comes back and tries to shoot Wednesday with a gun, but she's stopped by the kid with the bees. Oh yeah, there's a kid with bees. I don't care about him though, whatever. Wednesday finally accepting Enid as her friend was also pretty sweet and a really good conclusion for her character arc this season. Like, some stuff works. I definitely don't want to make it sound like the finale was garbage. It wasn't. It just had a lot of narrative choices that felt cheap and that felt like cop-outs, but a lot of it was actually impactful. And after the resolution, we are left with a pretty effective cliffhanger when Wednesday is offered her first phone and she receives an anonymous text from someone who has been taking pictures of her, and she is told that she's being watched. And by the end, Tyler is in captivity, but it looks like he's escaping, and we don't know what happens to Miss Thornhill, so she's probably gonna be back for season 2. Overall, for a show that flows so well throughout its entire build-up, I found the finale of Wednesday to be needlessly convoluted and messy. The show is usually really good at introducing you to things, but the final episode is full of very lazy exposition because they have to throw way too much information at you so you can follow what's going on. Plot-wise, it's just kind of lost me there, but the character arcs are still well handled in the end, and the finale does a pretty solid job at setting up a season 2. But yeah, despite my gripes with the ending, I think Wednesday is really fun. It's obviously not perfect, but in my humble opinion, this show is a successful experiment. I think it's a great way to reinvent a classic. The Addams Family, as legendary as it is very much a product of its time. Yes, it's had several incarnations throughout the decades, but having a take on it that is so modernized could have been a literal disaster, and I think they actually made it work pretty fucking well. I could use a bit less references to TikTok in season 2, but I think this show does a great job at bringing this iconic franchise into the modern world. Again, I don't really know how this show will land with diehard fans of the Addams Family. I have no concept of that. I'm guessing it's gonna be a bit divisive, but honestly, I think Wednesday is the show that made me a fan. Like, I'm genuinely super excited for season 2 to come out, and it kind of made me want to revisit the older Addams Family stuff. So, I don't know, I'm just one guy, but I'd like to think that if I had this experience, it was probably the case for a lot of other people, so that has to count for something, right? If you're watching this and you're a big fan of the Addams Family, please let me know your thoughts in the comments. Did you like the show? Did it land for you? Why or why not? Like, what worked for you and what didn't? I'm very curious, and I think it's going to be fascinating for me to go through your opinions. For me though, Wednesday was a super entertaining mystery with some bumps in the road, and I already cannot wait to go back to Nevermore. Also, this show made me realize that Roberto Aguirre-Sacasa is just a wannabe Tim Burton, and he's really bad at it. Unpopular opinion. The Big Bang Theory is actually fun to watch, and they fixed a lot of their issues in the last seasons.
I fucking hate this show. Every time I come home and like supper's ready and I just see my girlfriend on the iPad watching Big Bang and I'm like, fuck, not this again.
It's that kind of night, isn't it?
I mean, bless you if you've gotten to the later seasons.
Yeah, fuck.
Rage quit watching it.
My parents watched through the whole thing.
Yeah, I think I watched till season 9, I think, which is far longer than I would be willing to admit.
Yeah, got like early on got like the DVDs and like really enjoyed it when it first was coming out.
Well,
and
I think to be fair, like I think the first 3 to 4 seasons is like comfort TV for a lot of people.
Then you notice like you know some of the issues in the moment, but I think I had like this huge realization was all like, you know what, they always complain about people being like rude and bullying them and treating them back as their nerds, but like no one treats them worse than they treat each other.
Yes.
And then I hated that they gave like Howard a girlfriend, and I'm like, he's this creepy little weirdo, and he gets
and
like
his girlfriend
a
is
hot
dope as hell.
girlfriend.
Yeah,
Super
so sweet.
Cool.
Yeah, Bernadette is like she's so dope.
Nice, and like he keeps pulling bullshit like their whole marriage. So then she has to seem like the nagging one with her like voice. I'm sorry, like Leonard's not always that nice or
Leonard's
great.
actually kind of mean.
He's kind of mean. He's not the meanest of all of them, but
no,
like,
but he gets worse as time
he
goes.
does.
Yeah.
He does get worse as time goes, and then like like even like Sheldon stops being like lovable. Weird, and because he's dealing like he's autistic coded, and he stops being just that he behaves that way because he doesn't get social things. To just we're just gonna let him be mean.
He's just a dick after a while. He's just a dick, and then
people.
it's just like it's justified because it's just Sheldon.
It's just Sheldon.
Like,
Bazinga.